Hello, my name is Tina Jordan, and I am the Vice President of Membership for FCA International. It is my pleasure to welcome you to FCA's Women in Cyber Leadership Panel, brought to you by Women in FCA. Our supporting partners for today's panel are Sienna Corporation and Walker & Associates. Sienna and Walker & Associates support all of our Women in FCA panels, making it possible to bring these informative sessions to our community. So many thanks to Sienna and to Walker & Associates. As part of FCA's support of continuing education, this technical session has been approved to earn 1 GIAC CPE, and the discussion will last 1 hour. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat window during the session. As a thank you to our moderator and panelists for sharing their time and experiences with us today, Women in FCA has donated to Girls Who Code, an organization that values diversity, equity, and inclusion as essential to its mission of helping inspire, educate, and equip girls with the computing skills to become change agents in their communities. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator of today's panel, Ms. Linda Newton. Ms. Newton served for the Department of the Navy as a civilian for over 32 years, with 18 years as a senior executive service member. Her last position before retiring was as the Executive Director for Communications and Information Systems and Chief Information Officer for the Commander U.S. Pacific Fleet. Ms. Newton has received many awards, including the Presidential Meritorious Rank Award, the Department of the Navy Superior Civilian Service Award, and the Navy Meritorious Civilian Service Award. She currently serves her community as an Associate Director and a member of the Women's Subcommittee for FCA International, as the Executive Vice President for the Hawaii Chapter, Chairperson for the FCA Hawaii Educational Foundation, Board Member for the Honolulu Navy League, and as a speaker on numerous panels in Hawaii on government, business, and women's issues. So with that, Ms. Newton, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Tina, for that kind introduction. Aloha kako, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. I want to thank our supporting partners of the Women in Cyber Leadership events, Sienna and Walker & Associates, for their continued support of Women in FCA. Please take time to visit our virtual STEM room in the FCA TechNet Indo-Pacific registrant link. In 2020, FCA Hawaii awarded 24 STEM grants for a total of $35,000 to Hawaii schools and nonprofit organizations. These STEM grants recognized outstanding teachers and advisors who engage students in critical and creative thinking and demonstrate broad scope and sustainability beyond the application of their project or program. We are fortunate to have videos from a few of the schools engaged in STEM products and energizing Hawaii students. Our panel topic today is Senior Leaders Address Cybersecurity Workforce Challenges. The cybersecurity workforce is more important today than ever, especially in light of the ongoing global pandemic. There are not enough cybersecurity workers today or in the future. There's not enough diversity in the cybersecurity workforce. There are continuing cybersecurity issues with more frequent and more difficult hacks, viruses, and threats. There's a challenge to keep up training that keep it up to date and relevant for the cybersecurity workforce and for users. From our discussion, you will gain some insight into what is being done to address these challenges and provide the cybersecurity posture that we all need as individuals, professionals, and community. I am happy to introduce our panelists. You can review their full bios on the FCA TechNet Indo-Pacific webpage. Brigadier General Denise Brown, U.S. Army. Brigadier General Brown is the Director for Command, Control, Communications, and Cyber, U.S. Indo-Pacific PACOM J6. Prior to joining Indo-PACOM, she served as the Executive Officer in the Department of the Army, Office of Chief Information Officer, CIO G6. She has served numerous operational tours to include deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and also commanded the DISA Europe Field Command in Stuttgart, Germany. Brigadier General Brown graduated as a distinguished military graduate with her bachelor's from Georgia Southern University. She also holds master's degrees from Webster University and the Army War College and is a graduate of the Army Command Staff College. Brigadier General Brown is a highly decorated officer to include the Bronze Star and Defense Superior Service Medals. Welcome, Brigadier General Brown. Ms. Sue Shin. Ms. Shin is the president and general manager of Hawaiian Telecom. She is the first female president in the company's more than 135-year history. Ms. Shin previously served as the chief of staff to Hawaiian Telecom's president and senior leadership team. Ms. Shin has more than 2 decades of experience as a successful senior strategic communications executive. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of Laverne in California. She is committed to giving back to the community and serves on numerous nonprofit and community boards and advisory groups. Welcome, Ms. Shin. Ms. Jenna Seidel. Ms. Seidel is a senior executive service member and the National Security Agency Central Security Service representative to Indo-Pacific. Ms. Seidel also serves as a senior advocate for NSA's African America Employee Resource Group. Before reporting to Indo-Pacific, she served as the acting chief of operations for collections, exploitation, and cryptoanalysis operations. She served as the chief of data orchestration services. Ms. Seidel held numerous civilian positions with NSA after serving in the United States Marine Corps in leadership positions with deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Pacific. She is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and the Marine Corps Command and Staff College. Welcome, Ms. Seidel. Dr. Inez Miyamoto. Dr. Miyamoto is a professor at the Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies, APCSS, easier to say. Before joining APCSS, Dr. Miyamoto was a special agent at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where she led cyber investigative teams responding to a variety of crimes, and she conducted strategic planning, risk analysis, and compliance. She is a certified information systems security professional. She was awarded a PhD from George Washington University and a doctorate from the University of Southern California. She has numerous master's and bachelor's degrees and is versed in computer language Japanese. Welcome, Dr. Miyamoto. So today we will talk story. Talk story is a Hawaiian expression. That means to chat informally or shoot the breeze. Usually means something else, but since we're in a professional community, I'm going to say shoot the breeze. I will ask the panelists to offer their stories and insights as we answer the questions I will pose. I'd like to start with an icebreaker question to get everyone relaxed, both us here on the video and hopefully all of those that will be watching. I'm stealing this question from Juliana Vita, and she used it in 2019 at our Women's in Cyber Leadership panel that we held here in Hawaii. And I will answer it first. I may answer some of the other questions too, but I'm going to answer this one. So, what's your walk-up song for taking the stage? Obviously, we're not walking up to the stage, but if we were, or we'd be on the stage, that it's a good one. So mine is Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. So I thought about Staying Alive, a few other ones, given what we've all been through over the last year or so. But I heard that song a couple of times over the last few weeks while I was doing my workouts, and it brought a smile to my face, and it got me bouncing a lot more when I was almost worn down in the workouts. So that was mine, Walking on Sunshine. So we'll go around and see what you guys have to offer. Go. General Brown.
I knew I was going to be next. So, yeah, this is one that the team and I talked, trying to figure out the walk-up song. Just background, I've been in the position for about 2.5 weeks now. So my walk-up song is Welcome to the Jungle. But I'm still working on this one. I'm sure when I go home, my kids will be like, serious. So anyway, that's my song.
Great. How about Ms. Seidel?
So since we're not walking up, I was thinking a lot about what song really exemplifies, I think, the thing that we'll talk about later, which is teamwork in this arena in cybersecurity. And so I was taken back to, you had mentioned, going to the Naval Academy and Anchors Aweigh. And so when I think about this theater, I think about, where we're at, the core sort of Navy presence out here. But then also, Anchors Aweigh is really that Navy fight song. And really, every year when we have the Army-Navy game, we pit each other, against each other, but we also are great teammates off the field, and committed to, solving our nation's toughest problems. So I thought it really, captured where we're at right now in the Indo-Pacific AOR.
Oh, great. Ms. Shin.
Of course, I have to follow the Navy fight song, right? So I'm a child of the 80s. And, so of course I had to pick Eye of the Tiger by Survivor. Not only, I think, is it a great and inspirational song, the movie's excellent. And it felt really appropriate after the year we've had. So Eye of the Tiger.
Okay, well, I have two songs. So, because somebody took one of mine, but first one's Confident by Demi Lovato, and the second one is Fighter by Christina Aguilera. So I would have half and half. By the time I get halfway there, it would switch over.
What was the second one?
Fighter by Christina Aguilera.
Ooh. Wow.
I just like tough songs, so it was either that or Ain't Your Mama. So I figured the other two would be better.
Okay. So now we'll start getting into the easy questions. So we've been conducting cybersecurity training for years. I remember when I was still working, it was the same one year after year, and then they changed it, and then that was a different same one year after year. So how do we make training more effective for the cyber workforce in particular, and for users in society? That's probably a different type of training, but are there informal methods that might be more effective than formal training? So Dr. Miyamoto, why don't you start, since you gave me that second question, and I'd be interested as to your thoughts on this one.
So I've learned a lot from being a professor at the APCSS. So we interact with different people. And one of the most inspirational ones I've met recently is Ian Urbina, who does the Outlaw Ocean, and he does journalism for the ocean and crimes on the ocean. And what's interesting is what he said: in order to connect with the young people, for them to care about crime, ocean problems, pollution, and all that, you have to make it relevant for them. So how is he doing it? He said he got into music. So he has the Outlaw Ocean Project, and then he connected it to music. So they have their own CD that they sell. He has books, and he does social media. He says you have to engage, and he says it's amazing how this social media, just connecting with the people online, they're going to his website and looking for more information. So there's ways to be creative, and we need to look at how to change our mindset from the 1 hour mandatory training to becoming more relevant and more interesting, because the security is kind of boring unless you make it a little sexy. So we need to find a way to make it relevant for people. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sue. Maybe you have some ideas.
Thanks. I can share some of the things that our company is doing, but it's certainly not as creative as music, and that's an intriguing concept, I think. And sort of with my background as a communicator, I think it makes complete sense, right? How do you get people to care about something? I mean, that's how you're going to motivate action, right? But the one thing that we did that we found some success with, and I think you would put it into the training bucket, but our IT team would send out, and this, I don't know if this is going to be really popular with folks out there, but our IT team would send out these fake phishing emails. And it really, it served a couple of purposes. One is it really allowed us to hone in on those individuals that maybe needed some extra training and some extra reinforcement and review. But what would effectively happen is if they got this email and they clicked through, on the link, which, they should not have done, they would receive an email in response, gently reminding them, right, and educating them on why that probably isn't the best idea. And then those employees would then be put into a training program, right? So again, I don't think it's nearly as creative as music, but, we did find that it was effective, and we could hone in on those employees that maybe needed a refresher. So, and the other thing I'd say is it's really important, I think, that you have a pervasive security culture. So it has to be sort of something that you don't just do. It's not a one and done, right? You're not training and then expecting everyone to never forget. It has to be this sort of constant, evolution and reminders, and it just really has to be something that has to be a part of the corporate culture, I think.
Interesting. So, General Brown. Okay, you're on mute.
Speaking of training, okay. Really appreciate the question, the last two responses. So I want to break it up into like two different types of training. We have the training that we need for our users. And so, really, and it has to go beyond just checking the block, as was previously mentioned. So we have to be able to have users and society see how this impacts them. Just saying it's going to reduce productivity or cost money doesn't really affect them if it's all the enterprise. So for example, during our exercises here, in Indo-Pacific, we need to show the users without white carding, which is basically you throw a white card and say, you've been hacked, you've lost your access, whatever. We have to be able to allow the users to live with the impact of this cybersecurity transgression. I guess that's the best word I can do. And what the impact is, and they have to work through it. So really, it's more about making it more realistic. And then if I was to go to our cybersecurity or our cyber warriors, the most effective training is really hands-on training, and really in an offline laboratory. So as mentioned earlier, what reaches our young, our youth today, right? And so where we really, I have two boys, they're gamers. And so if we can, design games such as Defend the Flag, these type of exercises, which involves competition, and it can really make learning both fun and effective. And this generation of gamers and these digital natives, the more we can make cybersecurity a game to be won against adversaries, really think the better our cyber workforce will be postured to defend our real world systems. That is. Those are some thoughts. I have others, but I will stop there.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I do want to add one more. I'm sorry. So when we have these laboratories and they're working through in the games, this is also an opportunity for training with industry. So really where industry can come in and see an actual cyber warrior while they fight the crime. So just a thought. Now I'm done.
Oh, that's good. All right, Ms. Seidel.
Yeah, so I'll comment a little bit on, outside of work. I have found with my parents and friends and family, the best way to educate myself is to, have conversations about what they're experiencing. So, when my mom gets a call from somebody who's trying to probe her for information, we have a conversation about it. And then, it provides an opportunity for me to re-up my skills in terms of, safe internet browsing, two-factor authentication, how do you browse safely, and, just common cyber hygiene practices. So I think, to the degree where, that constant education that was mentioned earlier, making it usable and practical, I believe that was mentioned as well, and really, show how, doing these things on the outside to protect our own information, just like we would from a physical security perspective, is in our best interest.
Wonderful. Thank you. So we have to talk about the shortage of a trained and ready workforce with the required skills for today and tomorrow's cybersecurity challenge, particularly among women and girls. How is your organization tackling the challenge of recruiting, hiring, retaining talent in the cybersecurity arena, or even just cyberspace arena, but we can talk cybersecurity. Either one is fine. Do you have any personal recommendations for girls and women besides the general one as far as what your organization's doing? Is I'd also be interested in when you have opportunities to talk to women and then talk to girls who are still in school, do you have recommendations for them? So it's a two-part question. And we'll start with Jenna, since you
Sure. Yeah. So I think, the number one thing I would say is, it's really important to think, less about, we've always had long careers, in certain fields, and, being more open to the idea of being able to come in and out of government, in and out of industry, having a good exchange and creating opportunities for that, that transfer of information, but also being open to, the idea that you might work for 5 years, you might go part-time for a few years when you raise a family, and then you might want to come back full-time or start something new. So really, thinking about how we do business a little bit differently and being open to those opportunities. The other thing, that NSA does is a lot of, reaching out to the K through 12 schools. And really trying to foster an exchange with those schools in terms of the STEM field, the language field. There's opportunities on NSA.gov where educators can request NSA employees to come out and participate in science fairs and STEM fairs, and that creates that exchange of ideas and the broadening of opportunities and young folks' minds about what that opportunity space looks like. So those are just a few things that NSA does at that K through 12 level. Also, at a more senior level, college internship opportunities exist. We partner with a number of colleges and universities with our centers of academic excellence, both in cybersecurity and cyber operations, to create, again, an opportunity for folks to join the agency, understand more about it, and get involved. And obviously, we're looking broadly at how do you grow both in the female field, but then, as you mentioned in my bio, being a senior advocate for our African American employee resource group, really, how do we partner with the historically Black colleges and universities, the HBCUs, to do those same types of exchanges to broaden, and get a more diverse applicant pool, and then by extension, employee pool. And then into your second question about, in personal life, how to having that conversation, I really, try to mentor, try to reach down when we have, another program we have is a high school work study program. And it often attracts, folks coming in, they're still their senior year of high school. But how do you talk to someone who might see themselves, in the office administration field, and then show them the opportunity that exists? I started out in the Marine Corps as an administrator. If you had asked me 10 years ago where I'd be today, it certainly wouldn't be sitting here as a senior executive. But that was because I had great mentors who showed me opportunities. And so I, look for opportunities to pay that back.
Oh, wonderful. General Brown.
Yeah, so thanks. It's interesting. If I was to look at giving girls in high school some advice on their career, we did some research just looking for, some of the percentages of women in the cyber workforce, and just to kind of give you a snapshot. And so if I was to talk to a young girl coming into this field, according to a cybersecurity workforce study, in 2018, there are actually higher percentages of women cybersecurity professionals that are reaching positions such as chief technology officer. So 7% of them are women and 2% of them are men. And then vice president of IT, 9% versus 5%. So it's really one of those fields that's it's growing. And I think based on some of the STEM training, the STEM classes at the young age, these girls, they're coming into it, they are seeing these opportunities, and they're excelling. And I think it is a great field to come into. But I would flip it also, and not just for young girls, but for women that are looking for a second career. So, and it could be women that have been staying at home for the last, however, 18 years, this is a great area to come in as a second career, because you don't necessarily require the 4-year degree. We're looking at, certifications. These young ladies are, I'll call them young because they're still probably younger than me, coming into a second career. And, I think that's a missed opportunity at times when we're looking at recruitment and looking at that diversification. So that would be my advice. I don't know if I answered both of your questions. Linda, what was your other question?
It was more as to what we can do to try to get more people in general into the cybersecurity workforce, or keep those people. And then in general, Ms. Seidel offered a real interesting potential solution, which I know has been talked about and hasn't been put into place for the government, with that ability to flow back and forth and not get penalized.
Yeah, and I think I've heard it throughout my career, and it's true when I look at who my mentors were coming up. To see one is to be one, right? So when you're looking at these women that are succeeding and are achieving, executive positions in the cybersecurity workforce, that is another way to recruit. This type of panel, for example, is a way to recruit. I'd also say, it brings that diversity of thought into a workforce. And really, the more complex problems in cyberspace, the more diversity of thought that is required.
So if I may add to what the general said, the capturing the people who are in their second career or after they've gone through their initial training program, since the life cycle of a typical workforce a person is shorter now. It used to be 7 years. Now it's getting shrinking because of the skills are changing on a constant basis. So I think what she said is absolutely correct. That's the way to go. We're missing this huge gap of people who are from born before 1980s, and we're not training them. They have the opportunity. I take the time to talk to women, not in the cyber field, who are just doing, admin work and all that. And I say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about putting in for the supervisor job? Have you thought about going into cyber or technical fields, learning a skill on the side while you're doing this job, so you can pivot at any time and you're more prepared for changes such as COVID, if there's a downsize in work, or you need to make life changes. So I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on, and I think that's the way to go.
So, Ms. Shin, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you for that. It's actually, this area, I'll be candid, is challenging for us. And so it's been really informative to hear from the other panelists. I guess, you asked a couple of different questions, and I'll try to touch on them. I think as a company, I'll share a kind of a recent statistic. So, obviously we all know that cybersecurity is really a growing field. And it certainly is for us as well, as a service provider. So, when I found out about this, I was pretty floored. So, we recently launched a security operations center, a SOC. And so as part of that, we opened up an entry-level position in that SOC, and more than 90% of the applicants were male. So I think that, as we talk about how do we, encourage more girls, more women in the field, and I can't, I think it was Inez that said it, but, it's with panels like this, right? It's in showing girls that not only can they be successful in STEM fields, but why they should pursue STEM fields, and then getting them interested in those STEM fields really early on. And I think we've made tons of progress in that space. I served on the board of Palama Settlement, and there was coding classes happening, and Palama Settlement is, not a traditional area that you would think of, right? It's not the Kalihis of the world, right, of Hawaii. It's where kids are growing up in sort of the lower socioeconomic end of the spectrum. And so, the more we can encourage kids of all backgrounds to really pursue STEM fields and sort of then what does that translate into? I think that that's going to be really huge for us as we move forward. Some of the other things that we're doing as a company is that our recruiting team is specifically gone through diversity and inclusion certification training. And it's sort of one of these things that, you know, I think like everything else, you have to make a concerted effort, right? We have to be thinking about D&I and not just talking about D&I, right? And so those are just some of the things that we're doing. But again, like I said earlier, it's a tough issue. I think it's getting better, but it continues to be challenging for us.
Hey, if I could add on to what Sue Shen just said when she was talking about, you know, the lower economic levels, you know, that's also a real opportunity for those young kids, because you don't have to have the 4-year degree. You don't have to pay for that 4-year degree. You can, you know, pursue just the certs, you know, and then, you know, work your way through it if you want to go back to college to get that 4-year degree. But I would say it is a lesser expensive career to enter through certifications, and a lot of companies will pay for the certifications. You know, you just got to get that entry level position. That's
a great point.
So one of the things that, you know, I wrote down a lot of the points on this one, but that and I don't know who said it, Miss, a couple of you touched on it, that might be worth exploring more, and I'm going to take that back to AFCEA as well as to Jody Ito at UH, because she's been looking at basically a education spectrum plan, which is you start at K, and then how you work through. But a couple of you talked about, well, it's what to show them. So I think it's, well, you can get this job, but here's what it would take to get there, and it's not hard. So you take the classes, you learn, you do coding, you do the robotics, you take a few classes, and then figure out how you get them into a path to do that, and that can be both girls, but it could also be other diverse cultures and groups that aren't there, whether it's the socioeconomic challenges that aren't going to get 4 years paid to college, but still can do certification. So that one got me thinking, which is a good thing, having done panels like this for a number of years. And the other thought would be taking it, and rather than just taking a panel, because I would think if you were the 4th or 5th grader, girl or boy, this panel would be a little boring. So how do you make a panel for the kids to get them interested in doing that? That's one of the reasons why there's cyber programs and STEM programs and robotics programs for the hands-on for the kids to see what they like or what they don't like. Okay. Wow.
May I just add to that? I spoke with the CIO from Estee Lauder, and she developed a program in South Africa where the unemployed were retrained to do the cyber jobs. And what was interesting about that program was they were able to get the unemployment office to push the money towards cyber. So it's going to take a whole of society effort to fix this problem. What we tend to do is we tend to focus our efforts, like we were talking about, on the youth, kids growing up, I guess because they're more trainable and they're, big workforce coming in. And they would have more skills than the stubborn, non-technical adults that exist out there. But that gap exists, and we need to train our adults how to move to the next digital transformation that's occurring now, but we're not prepared for it. So I think this whole of society thing needs to, we need to prepare ourselves that way, not just thinking about it from the a narrow lens of just the cyber tech fields. So just a thought.
No, well, because you had offered me that question, which was what segment or segments of society are we missing? And you're talking about rather than the traditional one, which is you start here, as you get older, you work your way up. And yes, we do have that, whether it's people that need retraining. Think about a lot of the people over the last year and a half that have lost jobs because a lot of those different industries have less demand and probably will for a number of years. So there's opportunity there, and the question is, how can we take advantage of that?
And I've been in talk with Jody Ito about this issue about education. And one of the biggest challenges with the university system, not knocking them or anything, because they're an institution and, you have to follow the accreditation formats. But the challenge is the 16-week program. If you're military, if you are a working adult, you cannot go to a 16-week program. And they've come up with new, different ways to deliver the program, but it's still challenging. How do we make it accessible? And that accessibility, I think with COVID and with the transformation that we're going through, we will have these opportunities to make our workforce better because we have to. And we're functioning in this digital environment now. So I know I'm talking too much. So ladies,
No,
just jump in.
You're not. So I'm going to stay on this one for a little bit. Jen, I'm interested because I know NSA has done a lot. We recently had one of the, and I'm remembering which school was working with NSA Hawaii who got a certification. So we were able to do that. And while that's still looking at school kids, that it'd be interesting because we don't do that, I think, outside of NSA as far as the government is concerned. Other agencies or departments that looks at developing programs and criteria. So you say, yeah, you got it. You're going to teach them the skills that we want or give them the opportunities, the hands-on to do that. Is that something you think that can be shared with other agencies and departments or even at the state level so we could look at doing that, and whether or not that could be something that could be adapted not just to children in school, but adults who are out of a job or are ready for a second career or just want something a little bit more interesting than their job that they have?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, I would like to get you, in contact with the folks running those programs just to understand how to, formalize. But I think just in terms of, it's amazing to me, over the past few years, the agency used to be, no such agency, it was very cloak and dagger, we didn't talk about what we did, but, now if you go on nsa.gov, all of that information is accessible there. And so it's all been, pushed out so that folks can leverage it, can tie in. But I think, to put a face and humanize it a bit, we can absolutely connect with, out here working with NSA Hawaii, the Centers for Academic Excellence we already have with University of Hawaii. Are there ways to broaden that? And to the point of, the different generations of the workforce, not just folks coming out of school, but are there other programs, potentially we could look at, for accessibility? I'd be happy to take that back and partner moving forward.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll shift a little bit. I'll ask one more question, then we can just ask each other questions. So all your organizations work with other organizations, and I'm purposely using organization. So, we have in the military, there's the joint setting and the allied setting, or an other country setting. And in the academia, there's other educational organizations. In the intelligence world, there's lots of intelligence organizations. And in the business world, you have obviously working with lots of other partners, both to provide the services as well as to do your work. And that has always been a weak point, if you will, or the weakest link that, hey, I know what I'm doing and I'm secure in my organization. And whoops, somebody got in because that other organization wasn't as secure, or they do things differently, or they didn't understand what we do or our culture. So I'm interested as to how your organizations work with those other organizations. So you can both accomplish your mission as well as stay secure so you can do what you need to do. And General Brown, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so, one, I'll start with more DoD organizations. So Indo-Pacom J6, Indo-Pacom, we're obviously the four-star combatant command, but we work with the other service components. But even more importantly, we work very closely with the other agencies, such as NSA, and we, to the point to where we have an LNO here with us, and then of course we have Jen just across the street, or in this case for this situation right next door in the other office. But it's really about understanding the risk, and it's understanding the risk beyond our frame of reference. So the NSA brings a whole different level of understanding for us, and what risk and how, some of the best practices. But I would also say, that's where we have an opportunity with industry, is really understanding, those best practices with industry, who actually, we tend to be in DoD or the military. We focus internally on our lessons learned, while industry will bring partners from outside to learn from a broader audience. And so working hand in hand with industry is important. And then if I was to move to, that's how we work with organizations. And speaking of industry, we're moving more towards commercial cloud environments in the Department of Defense. And one of the things we have to do is we have to ensure cybersecurity is a core tenet of the offering. And how do we retain the visibility of our cybersecurity posture? And part of the reason why we're going to the cloud is because it is at times more cost effective. And that cost effectiveness may be just from not having to put our resources towards it. We can leverage the commercial vendors' resources. And so, I guess where I would end is, where we have to work with the other organization, our components, is really understanding, cybersecurity is an active and dynamic mission. And we leave no stone unturned. And I mean, that has to be the mantra almost. You just can't leave any stone unturned.
So, Ms. Shin, do you have anything to add?
So I guess, our company, I guess I can bring a different perspective to this. So at Hawaiian Telecom, we obviously work with a number of vendors, right? And we serve as a vendor to a number of entities as well, right? And so I guess I'll touch on sort of, how we ensure compliance. So we go through a pretty rigorous vendor management program. So basically every business that we work with goes through a process that basically validates that they meet our standards for technology, training, process solutions. And that proves to us that they're secure, right? And the reason we have to do that is because, again, like I said, we also serve as a vendor to our customers. And so it's all interrelated, right? We can have the best cybersecurity practices in place, but if we have a single vendor, right, that doesn't, and there's a breach there, then it has the potential, right, to impact our customers. And so, we take that sort of approach. Larger companies might have things like service organization control reports, right? They're basically audits conducted by a third party that validates, their technology, processes, training, communication, all of that type of stuff. And of course, those reports really ensure security standards are being maintained and they can be shared with other companies, right, as a form of proof. But smaller companies aren't really going to have that. And so as we, this is somewhat related, as we talk about cybersecurity and the role, I think Jenna talked about, talking to her parents or about these types of things. It really does touch every single individual. And so, as a service provider, both from a consumer or residential customer perspective, as well as our small business perspective, we offer security products that are accessible, easy to understand, easy to use, so that sort of everyone out there has access to those tools can help, right? All of us stay more secure. So, you know, I'll leave it at that. There are, you know, obviously the sort of industry compliance guidelines, you know, like NIST and PCI and all of those types of things. But I think, you know, sort of at a high level, you know, really ensuring that the vendors we work with, the customers we support, that we're all communicating and have security as a top priority is, I think, important.
Wonderful. So, Ms. Seidel, you have anything to add?
Yeah, just I'll mention a few things that NSA has been doing, and really a lot of it was underway, but really COVID, you know, spurred some of the innovation on, you know, in these areas. So, you know, one is just, you know, everyone thinks of NSA operating in a classified environment, and largely we do, but a lot of efforts have been taken to, you know, operate in an unclassified work environment where we can. Obviously, it's not all parts of the mission, but really have been deliberate about trying to identify those where we can. And then that really, you know, leads into the second piece. In the last year, we, you know, established a cybersecurity collaboration center. And that really is to partner directly with academia and with the private sector in a center. You know, we've been working in a temporary facility doing that as it stood up in the past year, but looking at, you know, creating its own facility here in spring of 21 to allow for that collaboration to happen in person between academia, industry, and government and NSA to share ideas. And really to you know, transfer knowledge and to be able to collaborate. So that isn't really, you know, at the core of your question. I think you were asking, you know, more how do we, you know, but I do think some of those efforts in terms of knowledge transfer, collaboration, and as General Brown said, you know, bringing in best practices from industry is really important as well, because they're not always, you know, we're all constrained by different things depending on, you know, which sector we fall in, but coming together, you know, allows for that knowledge transfer and for us to all be stronger in the end.
Okay, Dr. Miyamoto.
I think just to add on to what Jenna just said regarding the collaboration center that they're building, if I'm not mistaken, it is also international, right? That you are inviting the international participants to participate in that organization. So I'm in the business of educating our partner nations, and what everybody said is true. The common theme across the board is there needs to be that more collaboration, because the gap is governments and the private sector do collection and analysis well, and how do we harness that for everybody so that we can all be safe, because it's all interdependent systems and we're interconnected. So I think that effort, we're moving forward. It's tough because everything takes money, and I think that's another question that you have. So that's another challenge. But in the big scheme of things, it starts with talking and, like you said, building the networks and collaborating.
Hey, if I could add on, you know, the other thing that we do here at Indo-Pacific, we talk about our service components and working with the other agencies, but it's also working with our allies and partners. And so, you know, we're helping them while we help some of these countries build their cybersecurity capacity. The flip side of that is we learn from them and their best practices. And so, you know, as we move forward, and, you know, it's a significant effort here in Indo-Pacific working with our allies and partners. And, you know, we do humanitarian and disaster relief with them. I'm pretty, and APCSS, you know, does some training with our allies and partners, and they really appreciate it. And we also have something called the All Partners Network, which is a great tool, and it, you know, has a chat capability, and so people are able to exchange ideas freely. And if I could just add one more, when we're talking about training, we talked about Jen talked about, you know, working with her parents. The other thing we have to focus on, you know, particularly in the military, but I think all of us have to, is our families, and our family being our spouse or our children, helping them understand, you know, operations security, you know, social media, the risks that are out there. I used to, when I was in the War College a while back, you know, I was participating in the Eisenhower speaking series. And so when I would go talk to the college students, the one thing I would hit, and I hit on constantly with my kids, is there's no take backs on the internet. You can't take it back. Once it's out there, it's out there. And so it's really becoming more astute with this social media, and our young children, they're digital natives. This is all they know, and it's just understanding the risk that they are incurring on the internet.
No, that's great. So I think what I'll do is stop with the questions that I was going to ask and open it up to you as the panelists to see if there's any questions that you would want to bring up that you think would be good for us to talk about.
I'd like to know what keeps you up at night. I know what keeps me up at night, but what keeps you guys up at night for cybersecurity? I guess I need to share first. So what keeps me up at night is that we're not able to work with our partners and do the interoperability to make headway and change this culture that fast enough, where our adversaries are hitting us even more daily, and we're not able to protect ourselves. So that's what keeps me up at night.
I'll jump in here. I think, just looking at the weather event, fairly catastrophic in Texas and, the southern part of the U.S. right now, really highlights the degree to which, infrastructure is so critical to just, our basic way of life. And so I always, think about, what could happen in a cyber attack. We think of, places where there's, underwater tunnels where water is constantly being pumped out. What if that were to stop and we lost control of that? What would that mean? People getting cut off, how long does it take for electricity to be out before you enter, a catastrophic situation? And so that's really what keeps me up at night. It's a little bit of the unknown merged with the known, and knowing how, as we've learned in the past year, watching our society respond to catastrophe, we do really well in some pockets, but we also sometimes are challenged, as it pertains to information flow. So if we lost that, the ability to communicate with people and help them through it, what would that portend? So that's what I often think about in those sleepless nights.
Yeah, I guess, as an internet service provider, I think you all can guess what keeps me up at night. Honestly, things like the SolarWinds breach, right? And I think, Jenna, you hit on it, and as you did as well. Really, what keeps me up at night is I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility, because as Jenna talked about, we are providing critical infrastructure, right? Critical lifeline, not just to our end user customers, but to the DoD, right? In some instances, to the police department, the fire department, hospitals, first responders, right? It's, and from a cybersecurity perspective, obviously, again, going back to things like SolarWinds, it is the unknown, right? It's the fact that, there are people out there that are actively working they're actively working against us, right? So yes, absolutely keeps me up at night.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. The thing that keeps me up at night, just like everybody else mentioned, really, one is the network, because we are the J6 here. But it's not just, so we have, it's not just maintaining that the network. We refer to it as a PACE plan. So as we lose capability, what's our primary means, our alternate means, our contingency and emergency, are those in place? But even, more than just losing the ability to communicate is the compromise of data, of sensitive data, going back to the SolarWinds. And, Linda, you hit on it. It's about, how do you work with the other organizations to make sure that a second and third order effect of a compromise doesn't, impact you as a provider, as a user. And SolarWinds is an excellent example of how a compromise occurred, and the far-reaching effects it had. Not, and we're talking across industry, anybody that used that product at the time, telecom providers, DoD, et cetera. And but you trust them, and you have to trust them to provide that security for you. But I think at the end of the day, it's really first thing, when I wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, what's going to be, first thing I do is check my iPhone to see what emails are in there. And it's just that concern of not being able to provide that critical communications. And I think Jenna hit on an excellent point when we look at our critical infrastructure. And that is, it is our way of life. We have digitized almost everything in our lives, and we're dependent on it. And what happens when we have a day without Wi-Fi? I can tell you what it's like in my house. It's not pleasant. We have a generator just to power up our Wi-Fi router when we lose power. So, and I'll leave it at that, Linda.
So it's interesting to hear that the things that are keeping you up at night are not any different than when I was in the N6 job about 6 years ago. Hopefully one of the things that's different, because I lived out in the community, was that I had to have a separate secure cell phone. And I had to, you have to put in all kinds of weird stuff to make it work. And it's like, you wake me up and I have to try to make sure I got a secure line before you can tell me. So that was one. And then the second one was, because I had told my staff that was, if you were waking up the 2-star admiral, who's the operational guy, you have to wake me up first. So it was knowing that the processes were in place and that the people were trained to know to wake you up for a real event, not just, oh, the admiral's plane lost comms as they went over the Rockies and that satellite doesn't work anymore and the rest of it. So it was really understanding is, a lot of it's the unknown, but making sure that you knew that you had everything in place so you could respond when you needed to respond. So, okay. Are there any other questions that we want to ask each other? All right. So we're going to stop with the questions there. I'm going to do a little bit of a summary and then a closing out so we can all, for those folks that are on the East Coast, can actually go to sleep. And then those of us here can leave and enjoy the rest of our day. So we started off with Walking on Sunshine, Welcome to the Jungle, Anchors Away, Eye of the Tiger, and Confident Fighter. I put those two together. The points that I took away from the training, which I think are really interesting, which is make it relevant and focused, and probably look at, when you do that, how do you do that with the groups that you're going after, whether it's music, whether it's gaming. The other one that I think that I'm hoping has changed since when I was working is that it's not just a one and done. We used to have that, and you'd have to sit for it, and they timed it. If you went through and you did the training and it was only 15 minutes, you didn't complete the training. You had to do it for 30 minutes. So hopefully it's more of that constant training and make it work. And I like the idea where you show how it impacts you. So a lot of people didn't, they don't, it's like, well, that doesn't impact me, doesn't hurt me, so what difference does it make? And I like the hands-on lab environment, especially for the cyber workers. I think that's really a bit more than just going to a class and doing the test at the end of the class and say, yeah, you got all the answers right to make it work. When we talked about the workforce, yes, we talked about reaching out to the K-12s, internships, mentoring. I think all of that's there. There's the comment, which was C1, B1, really makes sense. And I think that applies to not just this area, but pretty much everywhere, especially if we talk about diversity. But if you just talk and said, hey, yeah, they could do it, I could do it. And I think we need to do more as you talk about, yes, keep working in the K through 12 with the schools, but what are those other segments of society? As Dr. Miyamoto was talking about, second career, reentering the workforce, adults, and how do you focus the training or change the training so there's access for time and ability to make that happen. So we had working with other organizations. You talked about understanding the risk, leaving no stone unturned, the standardized process to ensure training and the processes on their end for as you're working with all the different partners that we all have to work with. There was a discussion about accessibility to the tools, and that came up a number of different times, whether it's in the academic world or some of what NSA is doing there. You guys all hit on collaboration and best practices. And I think that's not new, and it's not a new idea, but the question is, how is that done effectively? So it is effective as you are transferring knowledge and you're sharing best practices, and you can put it into play in your own organizations. The one tagline that I like there was, hey, no takebacks. You know, yeah, we got that on the internet, but there's probably a lot of that even that we all know when you say something. As long as there's somebody listening, you can say, oh, I'm sorry, but so we need to do there. And another comment that come up in this area, so it was in a number of different places, is why does it matter to me? So I think it's whether you talk about developing a workforce, whether you talk about the training overall, or how do you practice strong security, is to make sure you can understand that at night. Make that. So, and we started up with what keeps us awake at night. Hopefully it's not too much, not necessarily, I didn't hear anything that I didn't expect to hear there. So hopefully that's good and we go forward. So a big mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much. That's for everybody who's not in Hawaii or hasn't been here that doesn't know what mahalo nui loa stands for. I want to thank you panelists for your participation today. I know you are all very busy, and we greatly appreciate the time and expertise that you have shared with us. Hopefully, we've all taken away something from this, and we'll continue to work on these challenges. So Women AFCEA has made a donation in your names to Girls Who Code. Girls Who Code is an organization that values diversity, equity, and inclusion as essential to its mission to helping inspire, educate, and equip girls with the computing skills to become change agents in their community. Mahalo to our supporting partners of the panel, Walker & Associates and Sienna, for their continued support of Women in AFCEA events. Mahalo to AFCEA International and the Women in AFCEA team for organizing and conducting these events. Mahalo to all of you who attended TechNet Indo-Pacific. We are grateful that you could join us for this virtual symposium. Hopefully we'll see you in person for AFCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific scheduled in November 2021. And please visit the virtual STEM room on the AFCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific webpage. Aloha, a hui ho.